The offense is shaking, the defense is yelling, and the transaction board is on fire. A tackle with 12 Pro Bowls could be coming to Chicago. An elite pass rusher from Las Vegas has the door cracked open, and the best backup in the NFL has a line of teams waiting for a shot. 3 stories that can change the Bears' path to the Super Bowl, and you need to catch every single one. Hit that subscribe button now. Stick around until the end. First story, Max Crosby, 3 words. Only 3 words came out of the Las Vegas Raiders general manager's mouth in Indianapolis this Tuesday, and those 3 words set off alarms all over the league. John Spytek, the person running the roster in Vegas, walked right up to the podium at the NFL Scouting Combine, and when someone asked if Max Crosby was untouchable, if that player was completely off limits on the Raiders roster, Spytek said this: "We're always listening, that is it." And let me tell you, those 3 words are the general manager version of telling the whole league to bring their best offers. Think about what that means for Chicago. The Bears were 1 overtime touchdown away from playing in the NFC Championship game in January. 1 touchdown, that is what separated this city from a real shot at going to the Super Bowl. And right now, in this offseason, Ryan Poles is standing in front of a decision that could define the next decade of this franchise. Let me ask this: if there was a chance to add the most dominant pass rusher of the last 5 years to a team that already proved it can go deep, would there be any waiting around? I think the answer is obvious, but pulling it off is where everything gets tricky. Let us talk about who Max Crosby is for anybody who still does not get the level we are talking about. This player is 29 years old, right in the middle of the absolute prime. Not someone whose best days are behind and is just jogging around out there. No, Crosby is a pressure machine, an edge rusher who blows up offensive lines, hunts quarterbacks, and completely changes the tempo of a defensive game. 4-time Pro Bowler, one of the best at that position in the entire NFL, with 0 room for debate, and there is a current deal with the Raiders, which means that if Chicago wants this player, there is going to have to be a sit-down with Vegas and real trade talks. Now, there is some context that makes this whole conversation a lot more interesting and a lot more relevant for Bears Nation. The Raiders finished last season with a record of 3 wins and 14 losses. 3-14, they hold the first overall pick in the 2026 draft, which everybody assumes is going to be used on Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. The new head coach is Clint Kubiak. The new general manager, Spytek, is building this roster from scratch in what looks like the start of a multi-year rebuild. So let me ask again, does it really make sense for Las Vegas to hang on to Max Crosby while that team is in full teardown and rebuild mode? I do not necessarily think so. If the Raiders are being honest with themselves, Crosby's winning window is not lining up with the Vegas rebuild timeline, and this is where Chicago steps into the picture in a very serious way. Poles has already showed there is no shaky hand when it comes to making aggressive in-season moves. The Montez Sweat trade at the deadline completely flipped the Bears' defensive identity. Sweat landed in Chicago, and suddenly that defense had a true elite edge presence. But Max Crosby is on another level. Crosby lined up across from Sweat would form one of the nastiest edge duos in the entire NFL. It would be a straight-up nightmare for any opposing quarterback walking into Soldier Field to deal with the monsters of the Midway. Chicago's cap space situation is tight, no point sugarcoating it. The Bears are currently $4.1 million over the 2026 salary cap. That is a real constraint Ryan Poles has to manage carefully. But a trade, unlike signing somebody in free agency, gives the flexibility to structure the deal around future draft picks instead of dumping a huge chunk of money on the books right now, and the Bears do have draft ammo to work with. If Vegas is in full rebuild and trying to stack first-rounders to build out that roster, Chicago can absolutely get that conversation going. Let me get ahead of what some people are already thinking. Is it too risky to ship out first-rounders for a 29-year-old player, no matter how elite? That is a fair question. Here's how I see it. In the modern NFL, teams that hesitate when the window is open end up regretting it. Look at what happened with the Micah Parsons situation in 2025. Everybody assumed that player was staying in Dallas. Everybody. Then, right before the season kicked off, the trade dropped and flipped the NFC power map. No one saw it coming because everyone assumed there was no way that player would be moved. That is the same exact storyline we are hearing right now with Crosby and the Raiders. Bear down means exactly this. It is not just a chant, it is a philosophy. When the moment shows up, you go straight through the front door. The Bears have a good defense, but they are still missing that pure fear factor, that disruptor who keeps opposing offensive coordinators up all night, drawing up protection plans. Crosby is that factor. With Sweat on one side and Crosby on the other, with Caleb Williams growing into that offense under Ben Johnson, Chicago would instantly become one of the most legit NFC favorites to reach the Super Bowl. So the final question for Bears Nation on this one is this: is it worth giving up draft capital to bring in Max Crosby right now while the window is open, or is there more comfort in playing it safe and building slower? Because if 2025 taught anything, it is that this team is already close, very close, and the Raiders are listening. Chicago, it is time to make that call. Second story, Trent Williams. If anyone thought the Max Crosby conversation was already wild, wait until this. While everybody at the NFL Combine was still processing spy tech's words in Indianapolis, another bomb landed right on Ryan Poles' desk. Adam Schefter, the person who always seems to know everything before the rest of the league even blinks, reported Tuesday afternoon that left tackle Trent Williams and the San Francisco 49ers are stuck in a contract stalemate that could end with a release into free agency on March 11th. When the new league year kicks off, 12-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, one of the most dominant left tackles in recent league history, and possibly about to hit the open market in under 3 weeks. I honestly cannot believe what is lining up in this Bears offseason, and nobody in this fan base should believe it either, because the doors opening right now are the type you see maybe once a decade, if there is any luck. Here's the context on why this matters so much for Chicago. The Bears rolled into the 2025 season with an offensive line nobody in the city really trusted, and Ben Johnson, in year one as head coach, turned that group into one of the best units in the league. It was an incredible job of coaching, development, installing the right system, but that left tackle spot, the one that protects the blind side of a right-handed quarterback like Caleb Williams, had issues. Ozzie Trapello, the rookie who eventually claimed the job and played well, suffered a knee injury in the postseason, and Ryan Poles confirmed Monday that Trapello is probably going to miss most of the 2026 season. That is a massive problem. Left tackle is the most critical spot on the line because that position is directly responsible for protecting the quarterback. If Chicago wants Caleb Williams to keep developing, keep making quick, sharp decisions, and keep running Ben Johnson's brilliant system without worrying about getting blindsided, there has to be a real left tackle in place, and Joe Thuney, an elite all-pro guard in the natural spot inside, is not a permanent answer at tackle. Poles spelled that out clearly. Thuney can kick outside in an emergency, but that is not the long-term plan. So what does a franchise do when it is in contender mode, has already shown it can get to the round right before the NFC Championship, has the quarterback of the future on the roster, and suddenly loses the left tackle with nobody locked in as a full-time replacement? Let me throw it out there. What is the move? I think the move is quick action. When the universe cracks open a door like the one Trent Williams represents, there is only going through it. Now, it is important to be honest about this whole picture. Williams is going to be 38 next season. That is not somebody who can realistically be penciled in as a 5-year solution. That would not be real. But as a finishing piece, the last big addition that turns a very good offensive line into a completely elite one for a team that is in the middle of the competitive window right now, it makes all the sense in the world. The Bears are not trying to gear up for 2030. The goal is to win now with Caleb Williams in the prime of development, with Johnson's system fully in place, with a defense that already showed it can hang with the best in the NFC. The cap space issue is real and cannot be ignored. Chicago is $4.1 million over the 2026 limit. That means before any possible deal with Williams, Poles has to clear room, and this is where the puzzle gets really interesting. According to reports, the Bears can free up $16.5 million in cap space by trading wide receiver DJ Moore. $16.5 million that not only wipes out the current overage, it creates real room to negotiate with Williams. And Williams, according to Schefter, carries a cap number of $39 million with the Niners. which means any new free agency contract is still going to be a big number, but probably structured differently with a change of team. So here's the question. Should Chicago trade DJ Moore to open up space and go all in on Trent Williams? From where I sit, that is the biggest decision Poles has on the table in the coming weeks. Moore is a quality wideout, a veteran, a receiver Caleb Williams already has chemistry with, but the wide receiver depth in Chicago is stronger than the depth at left tackle right now. And if the blindside protection for Caleb Williams is a huge unknown, everything else can fall apart. Think back to what happened on Wild Card Weekend when Trapilo went down against the Packers. That offense was not the same in the games that followed. There is another piece to this equation that has to be mentioned. The demand for Trent Williams, if that release hits, is going to be massive. Teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, any contender with even a hint of a need on the offensive line will pick up the phone on March 11th. There will not be any waiting around, no patience. If Chicago wants the best left tackle on the market, Poles has to be ready to move fast and execute cleanly. This is not the type of situation where there's a whole week to sit back and think it over. At the end of the day, the Bears have to decide what kind of team they want to be in 2026. If the belief is that this is the window, that Caleb Williams is ready for the next level, that Ben Johnson can take this group to the Super Bowl with the right pieces, then Trent Williams is exactly the kind of investment that makes sense. If the mindset is more conservative, more about stacking picks and building for later, then let that player walk and find another answer in the trenches. But here's the reality. Chances to sign one of the greatest tackles ever in free agency do not come around twice. Bear down, Chicago. Time to choose a lane. Third story, Tyson Beagant. And just when it felt like the Tuesday news cycle in Indianapolis had hit the ceiling, there is another conversation happening in the hallways of the Combine involving one of the most beloved players in the Bears locker room. And this one is tough, Bears Nation, because it is not about someone nobody is going to miss. This is about Tyson Beagant, the Bears' backup quarterback, the player who has worn navy and orange with pride since landing as an undrafted free agent in 2023. And the same player several NFL teams are trying to pry away from Chicago's roster right now. Ryan Poles confirmed in the Combine press session that there have been calls from teams interested in trading for Beagant. Confirmed, this is not a rumor. This is not board offseason media speculation. The Bears general manager sat in front of reporters and said multiple teams have reached out about the backup quarterback, and the exact words Poles used matter. There was talk about how difficult this decision is for the organization, for head coach Ben Johnson, and for the locker room. That does not sound like someone who already has a locked-in answer. That sounds like someone truly wrestling with whether to pull the trigger. Before diving into the breakdown, it is important to understand what Beagant means to this organization. This player arrived with nobody spending a draft pick. Not a single team in the NFL thought the talent was worth a selection. Then came Chicago. The work in the system, the learning curve, the growth, and when Justin Fields got hurt in 2023, Tyson Beagant stepped in and started 4 games. It was not perfect. Nobody expected that, but there was toughness, there was competitiveness, and proof that this player could handle the heat of starting at quarterback in the NFL. That is not something small. The Bears handed over a 2-year, $10 million extension last season. That is a clear vote of confidence from the team. And Ben Johnson, when talking about Beagant at the Combine, got emotional about it. There was talk about loving working with that quarterback, about being one of the best in the league, and about a belief that Beagant is probably one of the 32 best quarterbacks in football. That is a huge evaluation coming from an NFL head coach. So if Johnson believes that, why would there be any thought of moving this player? In my view, it comes down to opportunity and timing, not a lack of belief in the talent. Now, about the teams in line. According to reporter Evan Sidery, the Atlanta Falcons under new head coach Kevin Stefanski see Beagant as a legit trade target. The Falcons already said they are cutting loose veteran quarterback Kirk Cousins, who did not pan out the way they hoped, and Michael Penix Jr. is coming off 2 rough injury-heavy seasons. Atlanta needs a quarterback who can compete for the starting job or at least be a reliable option while Penix develops. And the new Falcons general manager, Ian Cunningham, worked under Ryan Poles in Chicago. That personal relationship between the two front offices makes a deal a lot easier to talk through, but that is not all. The Arizona Cardinals have also been mentioned as a team poking around Beagant while exploring a possible trade of quarterback Kyler Murray. The Cardinals have a two-time Pro Bowler in Murray, but there are real conversations about moving that contract once the new league year gets going. If Murray is out, Arizona is going to need a quarterback, and Beagant, with that friendly $10 million two-year deal, is exactly the kind of contract that appeals to a team trying to build without blowing the bank. Here's the reality of the backup quarterback market. Beagant's value right now is probably as high as it is ever going to get, as long as that player is sitting behind Caleb Williams. Why? Because there are two teams with a real need at the position interested at the same time. That does not always happen. Sidery reported that Beagant could bring back a second or third round pick in a trade. For the Bears, operating with limited cap space and clear needs along the defensive line and in the secondary, an extra day 2 pick might be the difference between filling a crucial hole and having to settle for leftovers. There's also a very strong case for keeping Beagant. Caleb Williams has started every single one of the 36 games played for Chicago, all the regular season and both playoff games, but this is still a young team with a quarterback only in year 2 of NFL experience, and in football things happen. If Williams goes down, who is the person under center trying to keep Bears Nation's hopes alive? Right now, that name is Beagant. If Beagant is gone, that answer turns into a massive question mark. The Malik Willis situation in Green Bay is the perfect example of what can happen when a backup keeps things afloat. Willis only started 6 games in an entire career. 6 games. And even so, when Jordan Love hit injured reserve, Willis played well enough that now there is a heavy market for that quarterback in this offseason's free agency. The value of a backup that is known, trusted, and fully locked in on the system is impossible to measure when that player is actually needed. So what is the verdict? Here's my take. If the right price hits the table, if Atlanta or Arizona offers a second-round pick, the Bears have to take that very seriously, extremely seriously. Poles cannot let emotions run the show on this one. The NFL business does not allow that luxury. But if the offer is not a second, if it is only a third-rounder, I think Chicago should hold on for at least one more year and see if the market or the team's situation changes. Here's the question for Bears Nation. If there was a chance to be in Ryan Poles' chair and Atlanta called offering a 2027 second-round pick for Tyson Beagant, would that trade go through, or would there be more comfort in keeping a proven quality backup next to Caleb Williams? Because I believe that is the real conversation happening at Hollis Hall right now, and the choice made in the coming weeks is going to say a lot about how much confidence this organization has in the health and consistency of the franchise quarterback. Day Bears, baby, the city is watching. This has been a night of stories that can literally change the Chicago Bears' path to the Super Bowl, and there is a real need to hear what you think in the comments right now. On Max Crosby, the question is straight. The Raiders said, always listening, is it worth the Bears shipping first-round picks to bring in one of the most dominant pass rushers in the NFL, or is that price just too steep? Drop a yes in the comments if that trade should happen, or a no if the preference is to build through draft picks. Let us see that argument get heated down there. On Trent Williams, 12-time Pro Bowler, potentially free on March 11th, if Poles has to trade DJ Moore to open up the cap space needed to sign Williams, should that move happen? Moore or the most dominant left tackle on the planet? That is the actual decision sitting in front of Chicago. Drop an opinion in the comments because this is what separates this channel from the rest. The voices here actually matter. And on Tyson Beagant, if Atlanta calls with a 2027 second rounder on the table, do you close that deal or keep that quarterback as Caleb Williams' safety net? My view on that is crystal clear and already out there. But what matters is what Bears Nation really thinks. Look, if you made it this far into the video, you already know this channel is different. This is not about repeating what everybody else already said. This is about breaking things down, debating, and living this team with the kind of passion Chicago deserves. This community is a family. It is Bears Nation united by Navy and Orange, by Bear Down, by years of suffering and the real hope that exists right now with Caleb Williams, with Ben Johnson, with a roster that is maybe a couple of pieces away from being the best team in the NFC. If there is still no subscription to this channel, this is the moment. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell so there is no missing any news, because here is a guarantee: in the coming days and weeks, Bears news is going to keep flying in like a Chicago March tornado, and there is no way anyone here can afford to miss a single one. Hit like on this video if there is a belief the Bears are going to the Super Bowl in 2026. Share this video with that Bears fan friend who still has no clue everything that is going down in this offseason, and jump into the comments and let me know which of these 3 stories gets you the most hyped. Which one worries you the most, and who your 2026 Bears are? This is Miguel Morales, the voice of Bears Nation in Spanish, Navy and Orange forever. Bear down, Chicago. See you in the next video, and may God bless every single one of you, family.